Hi! Welcome to Let's Go Kickass today. I'm your host, Vicky Carter. This is a monthly podcast where I chat to inspirational people from the fields of music, adventure and culture. People who basically are really kicking ass and making their own rules in life. So if you want to feel empowered and inspired, you've come to the right place. In this episode, I chat to legendary broadcasters Ronnie, Herel and George Kay about their expansive knowledge of the music industry, the incredible artists they've interviewed, and their passion behind their profession and how they made it.
Just love it, be passionate about it, and take it seriously. You've got to do whatever you can to make it happen.
I also speak to fellow adventurer, motivational speaker and expedition leader Jo Bradshaw about her freelance way of life, defying social norms and her 7 Summit Challenge.
I've achieved stuff in my life now that I never even knew I was capable of. It wasn't even a dream of doing stuff. It wasn't even on my radar.
Last but not least, I speak to radical feminist Anna-Louise Adams from the BBC 3 documentary Porn Laid Bare about the porn industry and also how to educate society when it comes to gender.
So I think by opening the table up to other people, then society does have a better chance at being progressive.
Starting with my first 2 guests, Ronnie Herel and George Kay. So I'm incredibly delighted to be joined by 2 wonderfully talented presenters, an insane knowledge of the music industry. You can spot a tune from a mile away, and also just wonderfully talented at interviewing people. You can just keep anyone at calm and at ease. George Kay and Ronnie Herel. Hello, welcome.
Hello, welcome. How are you?
Hi Vicky, how are you?
I'm good, guys. How are you both? All the better for seeing you both.
Absolutely. That was a nice intro as well. That was pretty cool, wasn't it?
I'm flattered by that.
I am as well. I don't know what to say about that. Thank you. You're equally as talented.
Oh, that's sweet.
And wonderful.
Oh, you guys. So, firstly, what inspired you both to work in the music industry?
Do you know what? I've always wanted to work in radio from when I was about 5 years old. I've no idea why. I don't know why. I can't remember why. And as I got older, I really started to get an itch for it. And I fought my way into the BBC. I was 16 years old and I used to listen to one of the late time shows. And I jumped on a bus, all right? Jumped on a bus at 16 years old and went to the offices of BBC Radio London and knocked on the back door. Just basically kept my thumb on the buzzer until somebody answered the back door. And this really nice guy called Tom came to the door and he was like, "Oh, can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, I want to work in radio. Can I have a job?" And he was like, "Oh, what can I do?" Like, taken aback a little bit. He invited me in. We had a little chat. And long story short, I ended up being a personal assistant, a studio assistant, you know, for a few shows at Radio London. And within 9 months, I ended up getting my own show. You know, that was it, and didn't want to do anything else, and continued doing some BBC radio, and then ended up doing commercial radio.
Crikey, that is persistence. That's impressive. Ronnie, what about you?
Stalker.
Basically, I was a bit of a stalker. I was behind that, just thumbing the buzzer on that back door until somebody answered.
Let him in, someone. For me, it was. Do you know what? I kind of fell into it, really. Okay, so growing up, listening to soul music and everything else, I started working in a pub, misspent youth, you know, leaving school early and then getting a job as a pot boy, and, you know, I used to bottle up behind this pub in East London. Got into DJing via that a couple of years later, similar sort of situation, 15, 16, playing music, and then started running clubs later on, making music, then running clubs. And I think it was probably, I don't know, sort of mid-20s. I was like, you know what? I've taken this club thing. I was running a night. I was resident on a night. Running a night on a Friday, running a night on a Saturday. And I just thought, I need to get on radio. The only way I'm going to get this thing moving and going forward is to get on radio. So I threw in a load of demos. I threw in a demo to Kiss, Choice at the time. I've told George that story because he was on Choice for a long time, obviously. And various stations, and got backed from all of them. It was like, you know, oh, we've got someone that sounds like that. Oh, you know, we're not ready for that kind of DJ. I was like, all right, cool. So I continued to do my my club thing, and then was approached by someone. I was handing out some flyers promoting the night I was doing, and I was approached by one of the execs for BBC One Extra when it was starting off, working title Network X, and said, "Hey, do you fancy doing a bit of radio?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" You know what I mean? And then went in and done a pilot and then got picked up from that. But that was really the driving force for me. Once I got in the door, I was like, I want to take this really seriously. I don't just want to be a club DJ that plays records on the radio. I really want to learn to broadcast. I want to learn how to, because it's a skill to be able to communicate with people, as opposed to just playing records and talking and backing amps in a record, you know. And that's what I wanted to do, and that's what inspired me, really.
And 10 years, I mean, you spent 10 years at One Extra.
Exactly 10 years, from 2002 to 2012, and then came straight onto here at My Soul.
Yeah, exactly. So both of you, commercial and BBC experience. What makes it so different working at My Soul now?
I did about 3 years at the BBC, and then I did, God, I'm embarrassed to say it, 22 years on a commercial radio station. I think I'm in the Guinness Book of Records for holding the longest daytime show ever in London, or something like that. It's something like that. I can't remember what it is. And now here at My Soul, I also did various other stations like the Breeze Network, UKRD Radio Group and stuff like that. So I've kind of like, my heart is in soul music radio, which is what I did at the BBC when I started. It's what I did at Choice for all those years. It's what we do now at My Soul. But, you know, sometimes you just get offered a job and you take it, and I don't mind doing a bit of pop radio if I have to. You know, I'm cool with that because, you know, you just read the paper when the songs are playing, you know. You know, if it's a song you don't particularly like or you're not into it, you know, you do your job, you know, you just get on with it. But My Soul is, to me, My Soul is very, very much like what Choice and One Extra, I guess, and what Kiss used to be like back in the day. Because those stations, although One Extra is still here, Kiss is still here, but in a totally different format. Choice is gone, it's now Capital Extra. There isn't a station like My Soul around anymore, you know, and we've kind of like, I think the ethos from day one was to recreate what Kiss and Choice used to do back in the early 90s, you know, and what One Extra used to do when they first came on air, because I think One Extra is totally different now to what it used to be.
It's night and day compared to
absolutely.
When we started in 2002, it was raw, it was rugged. It was literally, as I said, I was between me and another guy, DJ Excalibur. Big up to the Excalibur. We were the first two presenters to get signed on One Extra. Yeah. And we came in, we were told, you know, they wanted that pirate feel. Literally. They wanted it loose, they wanted it kind of raw, but obviously with a sort of more polished delivery in terms of a presenter. And I was like, yeah, I can roll with that. And I think what's happened now is it's got too, you know, I'm not going to criticise what they do, but it's just totally different. I think where we're coming from on My Soul is, like George said, we're taking that ethos in terms of, we're a little bit looser. Like with, I think you asked what the difference is between working on BBC and My Soul. I think for me, working on the BBC was very kind of like, there was a line. There was always like a red tape that you had to cross. If you wanted anything played, or you wanted anything heard, or you wanted to, I don't know, champion an artist or a record, there was always a barrier to cross to be able to do that. Whereas here, do you know what I mean? We're more of a team. It's just a lot more fun. It's a lot looser. And, you know, to be honest with you, I think we're doing something that, like Jules said, isn't out there at the moment. We're still kind of bringing new music through, but we're playing classic records that, you know, people like me, I'm 50 now, I just turned 50, and I grew up with. We can still sort of play that and fuse it with new music that's out there that's relative to a younger audience as well.
Yeah, so you have the freedom to play more music that you support and champion.
Yep.
I mean, both of you have been nominated for Mobos before.
Yep.
If you could give a Mobo to someone right now in the music industry for their incredible talent or their contribution, who would it be?
Wow. What, a singer?
Singer, DJ, anyone.
That's quite a difficult one, actually, because there's a lot of brand new artists that are coming through. I'll tell you what I really like at the moment, all right? I'm sure Ronnie would agree is Lucas Seto, all right? I just love his voice, and it's kind of like bringing that sort of old R&B back again, where you've got a real singer doing a real nice R&B track, you know. And then what was it? Karamani was doing your thing the other night as well, Ronnie.
Yeah.
She's another great vocalist as well. That's a difficult question, Vicky.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. There's so many artists, and I think if you sort of say, "Oh, who would you give it to?" without really thinking about it, I mean, there's a girl called Etta Bond who's just released an amazing album. Like, it's just crazy, and that's like, she's released 2 parts. She's been around since I was on One Extra, which is 7 years ago, and she's really, really, you know, been on. She's really worked hard, and the album that she's just put out is, and I think in the 6 months' time, everyone's going to know about that album. It's just so good. Don't know if I'd give her a Mobo just yet, but she, you know, she's worked really hard. I think Georgie's actually absolutely right. If you really look into it, there's a lot of artists to sort of, you know, be. I think I'd give Anderson .Paak something like he's an American artist, but he's just about to put out his 4th album, and unbelievable artist, work ethic, you know, he's a drummer, singer, vocalist, producer. He's just got Smokey Robinson, Jasmine Sullivan, got the late great Nate Dogg on his album. People obviously really want to work with this guy, so I would give him an award. I don't think it would be a Mobo, probably more a Grammy. But yeah, he's someone who I just think is, you know, shining bright right now.
Out of all the legendary people you've interviewed, you know, Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake, Mariah Carey, has there been one person who you've met and thought, wow, they're super talented, but also really grounded as well, so down to earth?
I've interviewed Stevie Wonder twice.
Wow.
Right?
Oh,
Once
my
at the
gosh.
Live 8 performance, he'd done a finale set and came, and we spoke to him afterwards, and he was just lovely. That was me and another guy was interviewing him at the time. And then 2 weeks later, he came over and done a show at Abbey Road Studios. It was just like a private, I think it was Radio 2 who kind of backed it. And I got a call saying, I was coming back from up north on a train. I got a call saying, hey, you know, Stevie's given us a slot after his sound check. Would you want to come and interview? And I was like, what? Hell yeah!
Yes!
Even though I've just interviewed him a couple of weeks or, you know, a month or so before. So I literally came on a train. I went home, picked up some sound stuff, and then went and interviewed Stevie. And he, considering all he's done, I think between him and Lionel Richie I've interviewed as well, considering they're superstars and geniuses and who they've worked with, what they've done, what they've achieved, the most nicest, humblest guys, both of those two, that you'd ever want to meet. And I mean, I said to Stevie, he had a keyboard in front of him and his sort of microphone. And I said, Stevie, you've done one of my favourite albums of all time, probably my favourite album of all time, and As is, you know, one of the greatest tracks ever made. Would you be able to do a little rendition for me? I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah. And it just started playing As. And like, seriously, I can remember the moment like it was yesterday. The hairs on my arm just stood up like real goosebumps and everything. It was amazing. That was probably the highlight of my life and career so far, I'd say.
Yeah, that's magical.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I haven't
the kids as well, and the family. Love your wife.
yeah, they got married. Yeah, don't forget that one. I haven't interviewed Stevie. I met him once, very quickly, briefly. It was a Motown party back in the early 90s. I have remixed one of his songs, How Come How Long with Babyface, which has kind of my proudest moments as well. But the standout interview for me was Luther Vandross.
Wow.
Oh my
3
gosh.
times. Right, actually 4 times. 3 times face-to-face in the studio, and the 4th time was on the phone because his sound check overran at Wembley, couldn't make it to the radio station. He rang me apologising that he couldn't come into the studio. We ended up talking on the phone for about half an hour. He then said, I want you to come to the show tonight. I'm going to send you a car. Stuck to his promise, sent a car to the radio station. I finished drive about 7. Car was outside waiting for me. Took us straight to Wembley. Now, Luther Vandross was the sweetest, most down-to-earth man I've ever met. You know, and you kind of, it might be wrong to say this, but you kind of feel that these people are going to be a little bit diva-ish or sometimes arrogant.
Yeah.
You just get a feeling sometimes, and it's wrong to get that feeling. But because they are superstars, they're on a different level.
Different
and
echelon.
yeah, and when they walk in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this guy is like the nicest man in the world.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't wish to meet a nicer person. And I swear on my kid's life, he invited me to his home in Los Angeles.
Oh my
If you're
gosh.
ever, no, I didn't go. Wish I'd gone now, but he was telling me how he has movie nights with Sylvester Stallone, and he was just reeling off all these names of superstar Hollywood actors and actresses. And it was like, seriously, if you're ever in LA, you must come and see me and hang out with us, and we'll watch movies. And he was the sweetest guy in the world. I'm so happy that I've had the opportunity to speak to him and to talk to him. Yeah. And, you know, it might sound a bit soft, a bit wimpish, but when I hear his music, I feel like crying. You know, he was such a lovely, lovely man. Not only was he completely talented, you know, but just a lovely guy, just so nice. And, you know, and I remember when I heard about his passing, that was horrible, because you kind of feel like I'm sure Ronnie's the same. When you interview an artist over and over and over, you do actually get to know them. And you do become friends. And my philosophy and ethos is, if you do the interview correctly, don't ever try and catch them out. Don't try and embarrass them. Talk about what they're about and what they do, and they'll be your friend. And if they're ever in town, they'll want to talk to you. And I've experienced that with Justin Timberlake and Alicia Keys and Joe and John B. and Luther in the past, they'll talk to you because they trust you.
I think that's funny you say that. If you don't mind, I just intervene.
Yeah, no,
because,
go.
You know, I think a lot of broadcasters, or not necessarily broadcasters, but the people that they broadcast for expect a presenter to try and trip up an artist, you know, just to get a little bit of dirt, or to try and get a moment, or to try and get, you know, more views, and I think that's wrong. I think if you're a fan, I tend to interview people that I'm a fan of.
Yeah.
And if you're a fan of that artist, you're not really going to, you know, if they've got a juicy bit of gossip that they want to say, you know, all well and good. Do you know what I mean? But I don't think that should be the objective of the presenter, to try and get that off of them. And like, I do find sometimes you got that superstar like a Luther, like a Stevie, like a Lionel Richie. I think the more superstar and famous they are, sometimes that's, you know, that's how they're nicer. Ronnie's right. Trying to get up in the game, they're trying to sort of have that attitude, and sometimes that's a little bit tiring, you know.
Yeah, no, it is wrong to do that. And Justin Timberlake's another good example. I've interviewed him about 6-7 times, but the first time I did the interview with him was when he just broke up with Britney, and he did his first solo album, Justified, was it? Yeah. That's right, yeah. And I didn't want to touch on that Britney stuff.
Same.
And I just remember him, when the interview was over, him saying, "Thank you for doing the interview about me and my music and not even mentioning that I even dated Britney." You know, of course we spoke about NSYNC a little bit, and we spoke about Puffy on the album and Pharrell on the album and Brian McKnight on the album, you know, but we never once spoke about Britney, and he was so grateful for it.
He actually spoke about it. I interviewed him, I think it must have been the same time, because obviously he was promoting that album. But because I kind of broke up tracks, you know, broke down tracks on the album, and Cry Me a River was obviously about her.
Yeah.
So when we got to that, he actually talked about it.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean? He addressed it himself, but I didn't prize it out of him. And I think that he did exactly the same thing. He sort of said, you know, it was nice to just talk music.
But again, he trusted you for doing that.
Yeah.
And that's.
Well, you're respecting them as human beings, but also with their own music as well,
Yeah.
which I
That's
think
exactly
they
what
really
they are, though,
appreciate.
Vicky.
Yeah.
They're human beings.
Exactly.
They're superstar, they're genius, but they're still, you know, they're still people like us. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
absolutely, yeah.
Well, you've DJ'd as well all over the world. What's the weirdest thing that's happened to you whilst DJing?
The weirdest thing, oh my gosh, I need to think about that one. George, you go first. Let me have a think about it.
I don't think I've ever had a weird thing happen to me while DJing. I didn't particularly enjoy DJing in Dubai. Nothing really weird has happened to me while DJing. Sorry to,
no clothes thrown at you.
No.
No someone saying, "Why don't you play this song? It's my favourite
you get that
song."
all the time. You get it all the time. You know, and it's usually, you know, the genre that you're not even involved in. You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, that happens all the time. You know,
all the
especially
time.
like the mobile phone in your face. Can you play that?
Gosh.
And I'm like, leave it out. But
God.
no, I don't think I've ever had anything that weird happen.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? No, not really.
Favourite places you played? Obviously, your favourite's not Dubai. Yours.
New York.
New York.
Loved it.
Wow. Whereabouts in New York?
In Brooklyn, a hip hop gig.
Oh, cool.
Loved it.
Brooklyn,
I was.
yeah.
I was. I'm not going to lie. Terrified.
Doo-doo.
Yeah. I was terrified because it's like I got family in New York, so I used to go to New York like 6-7 times a year. All right, and just stay with the family and stuff like that. So as far as New York is concerned, I love it. But when you're DJing in Brooklyn and you're going to a hip hop club in Brooklyn,
it's the Mecca, isn't it?
Exactly,
Mecca, yeah.
exactly. And you know that you got to do it properly.
Yeah, step up your game.
Yeah, touch wood, everything worked out. It was cool. You know, but I also DJ'd at a couple of Puffy parties in New York as well.
Nice.
But they're easier because they're more record label parties. So, you know, the stress isn't there.
Yeah.
But there was pressure doing a hip hop club in Brooklyn, but loved every second of it.
Well, with me, I don't think I've got a specific favourite, but I mean, I've just got, you know, Southport Weekender is the thing that kind of moulded me as a person or DJ as such. So I think all of those Southport Weekenders together amalgamated for me are my favourite events to DJ at, and hopefully they'll come back one day. But the festival's still going very strong.
Yeah. Well, I worked last year, and I don't want to work there this year. I want to go to it.
Yeah. It's going to happen. I think they're doing it in August this year.
Yeah.
First week of August, is it? Or
yeah. Change the venue. It's going to be in Crystal Palace.
Ooh.
So it's pretty cool. They've yet to name the lineup, but I know they've got some amazing plans for it. So
They always do. The artists are so big there.
Second to none. It is the festival for me. It's just amazing, and they put heart and soul into it, and it's beautiful people that want to go and just have a great time. There's no attitude.
Yeah.
You know, the last two, Finsbury Park, they've just been so good. Family days. Some people have brought their kids and everything, but it's great. It gets a bit mad in the funk bass, which is where I play. Bit of hip hop, you know what I mean? Bit of anti up, but you got to do it sometimes.
Yeah, you were before Jazzy Jeff last year.
Before Jazzy Jeff.
Nice.
That is always going before Jazzy Jeff is always better than going after Jazzy Jeff.
Yeah, you don't want to do that, do you?
Oh, mate, I've done it too many times. Like, you're only going after people like Jeff. You're going after like Roddy Gurn, EZ. It's you really got to focus. I mean, when you're going before them, you can kind of warm it up for them in a sense. Do you know what I mean? But going on after those guys. But it's enjoyable because it pushes me as a DJ. You know, it's a challenge for me to go on after someone like that and keep the floor, keep the vibe in that room. So that's another telling factor as to why I love that particular event.
EZ is the only DJ who I've actually got nervous before about meeting.
Really?
Yeah. He said,
so
hi,
good,
how
so
are you?
fun.
And I just went, hi. I was so embarrassed.
It's mad cool, man.
Yeah.
They're only human beings, Vicky.
I know. I need to remember that. Last question, finally. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to make it into the music industry?
Music industry.
Music, radio, both.
Roddy, you answer the music one because you kind of like been an artist as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I don't mind answering that, to be honest with you. And all I would say is just love it, be passionate about it, and take it seriously. You've got to do whatever you can to make it happen. I mean, bar kind of, stepping on people or stepping over people, that doesn't need to be done, but you need to work hard and be a perfectionist. Don't just go out and buy, like if you want to DJ, don't just go out and buy a controller and think you're going to plug it in, load up a few MP3s and that makes you a DJ. It doesn't. It's about selection, it's about reading a crowd, it's about doing your homework. If you want to get into a specific genre, it's about going back and doing your homework and really just having knowledge about what you want to do, being creative, and be passionate.
Yeah, I think Ronnie's right there. In respects to radio, pretty much exactly what Ronnie said. You do it because you want to do it, not because you think you're going to get rich by doing it.
Yeah.
Also, if you're going to get into radio, decide what you want to do in radio. Do you want to be a daytime presenter or do you want to be a specialist DJ? Because there is a difference.
Yeah.
100%.
If you want to do that, concentrate on that craft. If you want to be a presenter, concentrate on being a presenter. Learn the coordination between segueing from one song to another whilst talking between the two. Getting your stop sets right, getting your back timing right. Try and get in hospital radio. Try and do work experience at radio stations. Yeah. Even if you've got to work at a community radio station for a little while, because radio's changed so much since I started doing it. There are less opportunities now, but there still are opportunities. But as Ronnie says, be passionate about it and, concentrate on your craft. If you want to be a specialist DJ, do it and do it brilliantly.
Thanks to my previous co-hosts Ronnie, Herel and George K for sharing their experiences, but also highlighting how to get to where they are now. Some fantastic top tips for anyone who wants to work in the music industry or radio industry. You can hear George K live on My Breakfast and Ronnie Herel on My Drive, all on My Soul Radio, either online, on DAB or on their app. Next up, I spoke to the incredible adventurer Jo Bradshaw about her way of life, mental health and mountains. How did you make that change from working in such a stable and secure job to what you're doing now, really pushing your own boundaries?
Yeah, sure. Well, it came in kind of gentle stages rather than, one day I was like, right, I'm going to give up everything and change my life. So when I did a parachute jump in 2003, when I had a very normal, very good job up in Buckinghamshire, and that then turned into a bike ride in Peru, and I was very much a no-sayer then, so it was a friend of mine that actually sort of pushed me very gently but quite firmly into doing this bike ride and said, go and get a life. So it was like, okay, I think I need to go and do something. And that was with a company that are based down in Salisbury, which is where I now live. And I went back after that bike ride for charity and did 2 more. And it was then that they asked if I wanted to crew some trips. So the London to Paris type charity challenges that you see people advertising and asking for fundraising for. So I would stand on a water stop handing out bananas and motivation and then lugging bags all over hotels and all sorts. So, and it was a really good way of understanding going from crew to going from participant to going to crew, and then they offered me a job in their office down in Salisbury.
Oh,
It's
fantastic.
called Discover Adventure, and I had a very good job then. I was well paid. I had good holidays. I had, everything that I thought I always wanted. I had my own house. I had a fancy 4x4, all of that, but I just wasn't happy. And I was working for local government at the time, and the job was great, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I gave up working with horses back in 1993, and it was kind of a big turning point. And then thinking, now what am I going to do with the next 50 years of my life? It's like
That's
40
the thing.
years of
It
my
is
life.
40, 50 years.
Exactly.
You want
It's
to be
like,
doing something that you enjoy, and you wake up every day
Yeah.
saying, I'm happy.
I'm happy, exactly. And I had worked my way up through management, so I had good skills, and I applied myself, and it was all good. So I'd learnt a lot, but I knew there was something else out there for me. I just didn't know what it was. So I moved 120 miles down to Salisbury, and I sold my house, and I got rid of my 4x4 and just changed my life, completely, in a way that I was now earning less than I had when I started to work and all of this sort of stuff. But my richness in life started to build up. So I stayed in the office for a couple of years, and I was leading a few trips at the time to get experience. And then after 2 years, at the beginning of 2010, I took the big leap of going freelance, because I wasn't going to be let out of the office, because the office job was getting too busy, which is great. It meant I was doing a good job, but wasn't why I'd moved down. So I went freelance in 2010, and it really sort of gradually built from there. And everything I've done since, going higher in altitude, personally and professionally, as a guide, has been a gradual process as well. I never thought, I want to climb Everest. I would always said no. So I've achieved stuff in my life now that I never even knew I was capable of. It wasn't even a dream of doing stuff. I just didn't. It wasn't even on my radar. So it's it's been quite a ride, I have to
It's
say.
incredible, though, that
Yeah.
you've really pushed yourself. And yes, it has been a gradual process, but you've learned more about yourself and what you can
massively.
achieve.
Yeah.
I mean, I know quite a few people, and I'm sure there's people listening who are unhappy with their job and they're unhappy with their partner, but they're scared to leave. They're scared to take that step,
Yeah.
because they're in a secure and stable environment. But you did that, and of course, it paid off hugely.
It paid off massively, and I'm in a very fortunate position now that I can choose the work that I do, and I work for a small number of really good companies, guiding all over the world, either private groups or charity fundraisers, or working with a company that delivers DOE, Duke of Edinburgh expedition training. But I can pick and choose my work, and I'm freelance, so I do need to work, and I work really hard. But if there's a job that comes up that I don't want to do, then I choose not to do it, and I will find the money some other way, And it's the same with talks. I very rarely do free talks now, because I have to pay my bills, and it's part of how I earn my money. So
but it's also your self-worth and self-value.
definitely as well. And I think people often forget that if they ask you to do something for free, it obviously doesn't mean as much to them, because I'm exchanging a day of my life for you, and all the experience that I'm coming with and all the stories I'm coming with, it's got to be worth something. So, and it's another way that I, earn my money to do the big challenges. So, yeah, I very much use that mantra now. For me, is it worth time in my life, or a day in my life, or a half a day in my life? Do I really want to do it? And I know some people say, well, you're in a really lucky position, you can afford to do that. I earn less than somebody, working at McDonald's or something, but that for me is not the point. I have chosen to live my life this way, and I just don't buy stuff. And, I live frugally, but my richness in life is immense, and I've chosen to be that way. So, and I can change it back again if I really want to.
Do you think if someone isn't happy, they should be pursuing these different pursuits, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, we have one life. Why spend it being unhappy? Because you're not going to get it back again. You're not going to get to the end of it and go, right, you weren't happy in that one, have another go. It doesn't work like that. And I am really happy being able to do lots of different things, because I enjoy the variety, and I met up with a chap who I met on Kilimanjaro in March, and he was part of a group raising money for Mind, the charity Mind, and he does 2 or 3 different jobs and he loves it. And it doesn't mean to say that he's kind of scrabbling around for work. He's got 2 or 3 really good jobs and he splits his time between them, and he again likes that variety, and it keeps him fresh for each one. And that's how mine does as well. You know, if I was just doing one element of my job, I think I would get stale doing it because it's quite repetitive. Even though I'm in the great outdoors and, you know, working with amazing people, I think for me it's really important to keep that spark going. And people see it in you as well. If you're tired and a bit grumpy, you know, they've paid their money to be on an expedition. You need to be on your top form, really. So
yeah, well, let's talk about those expeditions. I mean, you've done over 30 at least, I think just in Kilimanjaro. What's your favourite moment when you're leading an expedition?
I think on something like Kilimanjaro, I think it's quite often people's first experience of doing a challenge. So it's quite a big first experience, but it's still a first experience. And encouraging them to realise that they are capable of doing it. And it is really all it is, not all, but it's putting one foot in front of the other. That is our main focus of the expedition. And dealing with the altitude, which is a complete unknown to the majority of people who have never been there. You can read all you want, but until your body experiences it, you don't know what you're going to go through. And then when we're, you know, near the crater rim on Kili and the sun rises behind Mount Mwenzi and you just see this massive red line behind you and the sun starts coming up and it's just everybody starts to come alive again and it's the most amazing experience. And then getting everybody to their personal summit, whether it is the summit or the highest point that they can physically take themselves. And it's really empowering, actually, because I had people helping me do that same thing back in 2004, 5 and 6. So, you know, and since then when I've been doing my bigger climbs with good friends, we're all there to support each other, and that's really important. So, yeah, I get a huge amount out of it. I think it gives everybody a bit of a better bounce in their step. There's so many people, if I meet them at the airport and meet them in country, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. And I was like, well, it's just a day, you know, each day as it comes, you know, it's the same in life. Then when things do change, you don't have the flexibility in your mind to be able to deal with them. And I think that's something that climbing has taught me massively over the last, I climbed my first 6 stanza in 2011 when I turned 40, and it was really from that point that I became a much more relaxed person in life. Because
Sorry, you're 40?
I'm 48.
What? Oh my gosh, you are kicking ass. This is incredible.
So, yeah, I've got good genes. My parents, sadly, Dad's not around anymore, but yeah, he certainly didn't look his 91 and a half when he passed away, and Mum doesn't either. But yeah, I've become a much more chill person, and you know, like we were saying earlier, it's like, is this worth exchanging a bit of my life for? If it's not, then I'm not going to beat myself up for making a decision to say no, because it's the right decision. There's nothing I can do to change it, or if I can, I will do something and change it. So, you know, I don't leave a perfect life, but what is a perfect life to me? It's I've created this kind of little existence that I'm quite happy with. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no, good. As long as you're happy, that's
exactly.
the thing. It's the pressures of society that change our warped feelings and things. I've met some incredible people travelling who have literally, that's it. That's the rest of their life. Yeah. And they've had to leave social media because the pressures were too much of having to lead a normal life. And they're doing like surfing in Indonesia and hiking up mountains. And they're thinking, oh, I need to have a house and a dog and
I know.
a partner.
It was interesting because I was doing a talk yesterday and I was saying to this, you know, group of about 100 or so, 100 plus, and I was saying, you know, it sort of in our teens and early 20s, we're so focused on getting married, having a house, having children, having a good job, having the best car, having, you know, this, that and the other. And to some that is a great, you know, goal to go with. But for others, it's just not. And I don't feel that we should be pushed into boxes. And it's interesting on trips because I get asked a lot of the same questions on various trips. You know, how old are you? Are you married? Boyfriends, children?
Is this by locals?
No,
is this
no,
by,
this is by clients. So it's, they're just kind of trying to get to know you and also trying to find out where you fit in society. And I'm not married. I don't have children. I have my own house. I've got 2 fabulous dogs.
And you're living your best life.
I'm living a great life.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh. But I used to be like that. When I left school and I went to work with horses, I wanted to marry a farmer and I wanted to have lots of children and live on a farm and do all of this. And I thought that would be my life, And then I was seeing a farrier and then he cheated on me.
Oh, gosh.
Thank God. He actually did me a big favour in the end.
I'm like that with lots of my exes. I'm like, thank goodness.
Like, yeah, see you later. Thank you. Not that I knew it then, but, looking back on it, I've had such a different life than I ever thought I would. And that may have been a great life, but I don't know. I'm living an extraordinary existence for me and loving it. Yeah.
How do you push through those negative parts,
Yeah.
whether it's on a mountain or whether it's in life?
So I sort of came up with these 2 characters that sit on my shoulders. So Negative Nelly sits on my left shoulder and Positive Polly on my right. And they're just 2 characters that I either use in my instructing when I'm doing DV or when I'm guiding on mountains. And it's a really simple way to talk to clients about the sort of little demons we have in our head. And everybody has them. I defy anyone to say that they don't have these kind of thoughts of self-doubt every now and again. Some have more than others. And I came up with them because I needed some sort of system myself. And it really came to the fore on Everest in 2016. So I was on the mountain in 2015 and the earthquake happened and we were really fortunate to survive and to get a chance to go back in 2016. And I got up to Camp 2 for the second time, and it's a really weird place, Everest. It's very competitive and very egocentric and very political and all this kind of really horrible stuff that I didn't want to be part of in the first place. And it was kind of being foisted on me and I was really uncomfortable with it. I just wanted to go and climb the mountain and have a good time, And I was sat in my tent and Nelly was having a good old chat in my ear going, you don't fit in here, you're not capable, and they're telling you this and you should believe them. This is ridiculous. I am capable of climbing this mountain. I proved it by climbing another 8,000. I've got all this backing from, I'm fundraising for a children's mental health charity and so many people have supported me for that and I've raised a lot of money and I know my parents are sat at home willing me on. And then I sort of thought, so Polly then kicked in and was like, the short-term pain I was going through would be insignificant compared to the long-term pain of disappointment if I'd walked off, because who was I actually proving anything to other than the people telling me that I wasn't worth it? And I didn't then go on to spite them or to show them I could do it. I did it for me, and I think that's so important, that we do things for ourselves and not to show anyone else, I told you so, because I think that's, you then don't own it. They own part of whatever you've achieved. And, I have, along with a lot of other people, I have big self-doubts about my capabilities and am I worthy of doing this? Am I capable and everything? And I think these characters, for me, just put everything in perspective.
No, it must be incredible. And then looking at the 7 summit challenge that you're on at the moment.
Yeah.
So is it right that you've completed 5?
Yeah.
Is that, so
yeah.
far?
Yeah, so I've completed 5. So I never set out to climb the 7 summits. So the 7 summits is the highest point in each of the 7 continents. So it's basically called the Adventurers Grand Slam. And around about 450 or so climbers in the world have done it, of which about 9 or so British women are part of that number. And so I climbed Kilimanjaro, Aconcagua and Elbrus through work. I did Acco first as a client and then worked on the mountain a couple of times. And then Everest came along quite by mistake and chance and all sorts of things. And I found, quite by chance, I actually found a sponsor. And that's where my involvement with Place to Be then started.
And this is the charity, yeah.
Yeah, the charity I've been supporting since 2014. So they're a children's mental health charity. and they support about 300 schools around the UK with counselling sessions. So either the children within the school can go to one-to-one sessions or have group sessions, and it's art and play and all sorts of amazing ways of helping them deal with the situations they're going through. But it's not just the children that the charity supports, it's the teachers and the carers and the parents as well. So it's a whole, 360 holistic approach. It's fantastic. Once I got back from Everest, we decided to try and complete the 7 summits and continue the fundraising for the charity.
Isn't Jo so kick-ass and inspiring? She's planning to finish the 7 summits this year, so if you're an individual or business and can donate some money towards the expedition and charity, or sponsor in any way possible, then check out Jo's Mighty 90 section on our website, jobradshaw.co.uk. Next up, I speak to radical feminist Anna-Louise Adams from the BBC 3 documentary Porn Laid Bare, which, by the way, if you haven't watched already, you can watch anytime on Catch Up. Just check it out on BBC iPlayer. For those of people who haven't watched it, could you describe it in your own words what it is?
Yeah, so the premise was basically 6 young people with varying attitudes to porn, travelling to Spain for 2 weeks and really kind of becoming immersed in the porn industry. So we met porn stars, porn producers, feminists who were opposed to porn. We met people who defended porn, and really just kind of got a full-on flavour for what the industry's like, to kind of show everybody else and also to see whether our opinions had changed. Because I think really it's one of those things that everybody knows a little bit about, but you don't really know too much. So it was kind of saying to people, look, this is what it's really about.
And how was the experience for you? Because you kind of came with the same views, and I feel like you left with the same views, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually there were parts which I felt more positively towards porn than I previously had. But really some of the stuff that we saw did cement my views. And I kind of expected that, to be honest. I didn't really go in blind. I felt like I'd read around it quite a lot. I'm a keen feminist anyway, so it's not something that I hadn't thought about before. But, there were definitely people that we met who kind of opened my eyes to more ethical types of porn, which I would be more supportive of, I guess.
What do you hope for people to take away when they see Porn Laid Bare?
I think really the biggest message that I kind of wanted to take across is that we should be critically analysing our porn habits, and we should be interrogating them, because we interrogate everything else. Everybody talks about the food they eat and the things that they put into their bodies that way. And I think it's important to think about what we put into our minds as well, but also to really understand the environment that porn is made in, and that really there's no way of telling when you're sat at home watching porn whether the people involved in that production were there fully of their own volition, or whether there might be circumstances under which it might have been more exploitative, and you never know that. So I just wanted people to be able to think a little bit about that and maybe change their habits slightly.
Well, yeah, 100% agree, because not only is it affecting your mind, but it's affecting the way you see other people and your own body as well. So it's just a knock-on domino effect, because then that will affect your relationships in your future,
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the key things was about sort of empathy and how we can relate to other people. There's a study which showed that around 88% of the most popular porn films that they analysed depicted violence to women, and that's a really strong message to be sending to people, and not only adults but to children, because we know that a lot of children watch porn, and that doesn't only just send a message to boys about how they should be treating women, but it also sends a message to women. I think it teaches submission in a lot of women, and I think girls grow up thinking that rough sex is the norm, and that's fine if individuals want to experiment with that and they're happy to do that, but that shouldn't be something which is portrayed as the norm, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was another statistic where it was 41% of 18 to 25-year-olds think porn dehumanises women. But I mean, why do people still watch it if that's the case?
I think it's become so normalized, it's just become embedded in our lives and so ingrained. I think people take it for granted. It's just there. And I think that was one of the good things about the documentary, was that it's, you know, starting a conversation about something that we take for granted. I think that a lot of people wouldn't otherwise think about the effects that it has. I think women quite often think about the way that they relate to, you know, bodies in porn, for example. There's a lot of comparing and contrasting, but I don't think as many young men probably analyse porn to the same degree that women do. So hopefully, you know, that message and that understanding that it is dehumanising, or even if it's not intrinsically, that people feel like it's dehumanising, that's an important conversation to have.
Hopefully people will see that in the series and take that away with them. You've already mentioned that you're a feminist. What, in your own words, would you describe being a feminist is and who they are?
For me, I kind of self-identify as a radical feminist, which a lot of people get confused with because they take radical to mean extreme, whereas generally when we say radical, we mean its Latin counterpart, which means root. So for me, feminism is about tackling the root of the problem, which is patriarchy. And patriarchy to me manifests itself in a plethora of ways, pornography being one of them, prostitution being one of them. They're kind of industries that I would argue endorse violence to women. But generally for me, feminism is about it's about emancipating women, but liberating men and women from, you know, the really strong, pervasive gender role-based stereotypes which we enforce upon one another. However that's done, I think is a good thing. And it's really about, I think a lot of people even now say that, you know, feminism is about equality. Well, I don't think it's good enough to say we should be like men, because I think there's a big problem with masculinity as well. I think for me, my feminism is about creating a future which is different to what we have now, but which liberates all of us from the stereotypes which we've enforced up to this point.
And what steps do you think we could take to make that change?
I think even regarding porn, education is the biggest thing for me. I think that we have to start having these conversations with children and using the national curriculum to promote a more equal feminist agenda. I think that one of the big things actually that I think would really help is the way in which our parental leave policies operate. It sounds a bit of a weird one.
No, I get you.
You know, men in this country are only entitled to 2 weeks of paternity leave. And when you look at kind of the Nordic countries, the gender equality that they have over there, you look at their parental leave policies, and they have, specifically in Norway, I think Sweden as well, a father's quota, which is, I think 90 days, which is reserved for the man. That's non-transferable.
Yeah.
And I think that by incorporating men into family life more, that's a great way of reducing, you know, these stereotypes that women are carers, men are earners. I think by adopting a fairer family kind of structure, or a society which encourages shared family obligations, that will do a lot for gender equality.
I think so, because then when you're growing up as well, you see that there's more of a balance in roles, and then that's ingrained in the children, and it's the way they think. Yeah,
absolutely, and giving children role models, and also one of the really interesting things about that parental leave policy in the Nordic countries is that a lot of the men that go through the daddy's quota, they kind of turn around at the end of it and say, "Oh my God, all this cooking, all this cleaning," because when they're using it, the women go off to work.
Of course,
they go back to their jobs.
Yeah,
and I think that's really, really interesting, being able to see firsthand as a man the amount of work that goes into running a household, which many women do without ever complaining, really. I think that definitely with the younger generations, you can see this kind of trickle-down effect where actually specifically young men are kind of challenging each other about what they're saying. I'm not sure what exactly has caused it. Perhaps, you know, a bigger public debate inspired by things like the Me Too movement maybe. But I think it's really commendable that kids are now kind of, it's at the forefront of their minds. I think especially with feminism, you know, there's a lot of pushback. It's just kind of, oh, well, you're just a feminist, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll become dismissed just because you've got that label. So I think by opening the table up to other people, then society does have a better chance at being progressive.
That was Anna-Louise Adams from the BBC Three documentary Porn Laid Bare. Isn't she so smart and intelligent? She gets my vote for Prime Minister. Anna-Louise Adams for Prime Minister. That's it from me for episode 3. Thanks for listening to Let's Go Kickass today. If you would like to subscribe, comment or rate, please feel free to do so. And you're welcome to follow my Twitter or Instagram for this podcast at Go Kickass Today. I'm Vicky Carter and keep kicking ass.